Season 3 of The Bear opens in the aftermath of the restaurant's soft opening at the end of Season 2, a success in the kitchen under Richie and Sydney's leadership, but a personal disaster for Carmy. While the night went well from a restaurant perspective, Carmy was locked in the walk-in fridge and had painful falling outs with both Claire and Richie. In the aftermath of the opening, we see Carmy pensively looking out the window of his Chicago apartment and then looking at a scar on his hand. This makes him think about the past. Flashing back, we see Carmy working at various restaurants throughout his career, including the French Laundry, Ever, and Empire, among others. We see the contrast between the care and support that chefs like Andrea Terry and Thomas Keller show Carmy versus the brutal treatment he receives from Chef David Fields. We also see traits that Carmy learned, consciously or subconsciously, that he got from David Fields, like cutting tape and putting notes on it. This suggests that David Fields is with him and connected to him in some way, whether he knows it or not, throughout Season 3. There is very little dialogue in the first episode, and it's mostly set to the same instrumental track, Together, by Trent Reznor. The episode plays almost entirely like a montage in a non-linear fashion. We see scenes of Carmy's family, both positive and negative moments with Claire. We see the pleasure that Carmy took when he was learning to cook, and we see that juxtapositioned against the misery he experienced under David Fields. We also see Sydney taste Carmy's dish at Empire, a moment that inspired her to continue cooking. Carmy had altered David Fields' dish without permission, reverting it back to his original vision with blood orange. By chance, Sydney received that version. It raises the question, if she tasted David Fields' version instead, would her career, or even her life, have taken a different path? Up until this point, Carmy has demonstrated both compassion and cruelty. Season 3 begins with him poised to tip in either direction. The first episode displays the possible paths he could pursue in Season 3. Back to present day, Sydney has moved out of her father's home and into her own place. She's grappling with whether to sign the Bears partnership agreement, as the restaurant, despite its buzz, is on shaky ground. While the food receives high praise and the restaurant is packed nightly, the Bear is still losing money. Financial stability remains elusive. Meanwhile, Carmy has introduced a list of non-negotiables, a manifesto of standards and ideals. The list includes demanding expectations like changing the menu daily, along with more abstract goals like vibrant collaboration. While Carmy sees the list as a path to excellence, many on his team view it as unrealistic and even absurd. Carmy appears to be channeling his trauma in increasingly unhealthy ways, and early in the season he resembles Chef David Fields far more than Chef Andrea Terry. Still, moments of warmth occasionally surface, such as when he gently checks in on Marcus after the passing of his mother, who died during the Bears' soft opening at the end of Season 2. Part of the reason the Bear is struggling financially is the expensive ingredients Carmy is ordering, like the butter from Orwell, Vermont, which costs $11,000. Because of the rotating menu, many of these expensive ingredients aren't being fully used either. This is putting a lot of financial pressure on Cicero. Sugar is trying to get an extra table turnover to recoup the cost, because the front of the house isn't turning tables over fast enough. The work in the restaurant seems grueling as Carmy is barking orders during the service, and they are forced to meticulously clean the kitchen every night. Carmy appears to be breaking down and taking everyone else with him, even though many of the positive articles about the restaurant are solely about him, which is also causing a rift with him and Sydney. The only section of the restaurant making any money is the beef sandwich section, which Ibrahim is running. That was also struggling before Ibrahim receives some assistance. Richie, meanwhile, is trying to pull things together, but is struggling with the fact that his ex-wife Tiff is getting remarried and his daughter thinks that he's alone. In all of this chaos, Chef Adam from Ever approaches Sydney about a possible position to be an executive chef in a new restaurant he will be starting because Chef Terry is closing Ever. At this point, we learn that a food critic from the Chicago Tribune has visited the restaurant, and everyone is in a panic. This review seemingly could make or break the restaurant. Carmy is having a lot of anxiety about this, and he clearly isn't enjoying the food creation process like he used to, and he's starting to wonder if he's messing this whole thing up. When he used to look at dishes and ingredients, he was optimistic and seemed to enjoy the process, but now he looks like he's in pain when he's creating dishes, and he slams them into the trash can repeatedly throughout the season when something isn't perfect. With costs of the restaurant continuing to sink it financially, Cicero brings in his associate named the Computer to analyze the restaurant. He makes a lot of suggestions to lower cost, some of which are implemented, but many of them are not. Flashback to Tina waking up at 6 a.m. prior to when she worked at the Bear under Mikey. This starts off episode 6 of Season 3, which is probably the best episode in the season. The episode mostly focuses on Tina and her backstory. Tina worked in an accounting role at a chocolate factory for 15 years before being fired. This is a problem because to get another similar job, she needs a bachelor's degree. We see Tina searching for job after job, both in person and over the internet, after she's told to apply on LinkedIn or on the company website multiple times, it's clear she's behind the times when it comes to applying for jobs. Not only does her family need the money to stay in an apartment, which now has a higher rent payment, but Tina needs the routine, and she needs to feel useful. Without being able to contribute, she seems ashamed and at her breaking point when she is told the job is closed that she was coming in to interview for. The front desk person is very dismissive of her, and she swears at them before leaving. She seems like she's at the end of her rope, and she goes into the beef and asks for a cup of coffee, which Richie gives her on the house, and then another employee gives her a sandwich for free. When she sits down to eat the sandwich, initially she doesn't seem to like it, and she begins to cry. Mikey and Richie don't know what to do because they don't want her to drive off customers, so Mikey sits down and talks with her. It's easy to see why people love Mikey, as he connects with Tina quickly, disarming her with his warmth and humor. Tina tells him about her difficulty and desperation in attempting to find a position, and Mikey tells her a heart-wrenching story about when he was a child, he went to an Art Deco office building that he thought was a building of dreams. But he knew he'd never work somewhere like that because it wasn't in the cards for someone like him. Given that he felt trapped into running his father's business and ultimately took his life later, it's a particularly poignant scene. After hearing that Tina needs a job, Mikey offers her a position as a line cook. Tina tries the sandwich again after a discussion with Mikey and really seems to enjoy it. The episode ends with Tina opening her purse and pulling out the beef t-shirt. The episode was a nice break from what is currently going on at the Bear, which is struggling, and it seems everyone at the restaurant is struggling as well. Carmy is struggling both professionally and personally. Carmy is particularly struggling with the idea that he needs to apologize to Claire. He goes to an AA meeting where they talk about apologizing not being enough. He talks with the facts who tell him he needs to apologize, and he even sits down and thinks in the dark about calling Claire, but he never does. It's weighing on him the entire season. It seems like he really wants to call her, but at the same time, it seems like he believes that Claire is a distraction that will inhibit him from being able to run a successful restaurant. To get out of the restaurant one day, Sugar goes to pick up some seafolds, and when she's putting the paper towels into her car, she starts to go into labor. While she's driving to the hospital, Sugar tries to call everyone she can think of to help her out at the hospital, but no one is answering, so she ends up calling her mother, who jumps at the opportunity to meet her. Since Donna is the only person at the facility with Sugar, she goes into the delivery room with her. And initially Donna is pushy, and she's annoying Sugar, but that begins to fade, and Sugar begins to take some of Donna's suggestions more seriously, like getting an epidural. Donna also tells some stories about her pregnancy experiences with Mikey and Carmy, which he doesn't describe in positive terms. Both sounded extremely difficult. However, when she talks about her experience with Sugar, she describes it in positive terms that are almost nostalgic. The two really begin to connect in a way they historically usually don't, but that is when Pete finally gets to the hospital, and you can tell by the look on Donna's face that leaving the delivery room in that moment is really difficult for her. She was finally connecting with her daughter. Donna goes into the waiting room and she is joined only by the fax, and Sugar ends up having the baby with no complications. While breaking boxes down one day, the fax asks Carmy if he thinks that Claire is haunting him. A haunt is something the fax bring up consistently throughout season 3. They tell Carmy that he needs to apologize, and eventually Carmy is wondering if maybe indeed Claire is haunting him, because he and the restaurant are struggling so much. Speaking of struggling, Carmy and Richie are having a difficult time, and they are constantly fighting. This is when we see maybe the best cinematic shot of the 3rd season of The Bear, with Richie standing on the dining room side of the restaurant and Carmy standing on the kitchen side, with ominous music playing in the background. Both of them look like they're ready to go to war. At this point, we learn the terms of the offer that Sydney received from The Bear, and they are worse than the terms that Chef Adam was willing to pay her. To work with The Bear, they'd be paying her $70,000 a year, but Adam would be paying her $80,000 a year. Adam's offer would also allow her more freedom and credit than she's getting currently at The Bear. At The Bear, Carmy clearly doesn't seem to view her as an equal. One day when they're talking about the menu, he shoots down all of Sydney's ideas without even a back and forth. Carmy will say things to the staff, such as that he wants his legacy to be something with no conflict, something where people are easily able to interact with each other. But he really acts in just the opposite way. However, he does invite Sydney to the funeral dinner forever. One day when Carmy is behind the restaurant, Cicero drops by and talks with him about the review from the Chicago Tribune, and the fact that it needs to be good, or else he might have to close the restaurant. After talking with Carmy, we learn that he kind of chickens out because he asks to close the restaurant regardless of the review, according to the computer, or else he's going to go broke himself. Cicero, though, is having trouble giving up on Carmy and Sugar, as he feels guilty about not doing more for them during their childhood. On the night of the Ever funeral dinner, we see Carmy looking at pictures on the wall, and Richie walks in after him, but doesn't even say hi to him. because they are barely even on speaking terms anymore. At this event, there are a bunch of famous chefs that have crossed paths with Chef Terry, and they are enjoying the food and trading war stories from the past. They are sharing their favorite and most memorable moments in cooking, everyone but Carmy. Carmy is noticeably staring at Chef Fields. Carmy can't think of anything but his trauma that he suffered at the hands of this individual. And when David gets up to go to the bathroom, Carmy confronts him. Carmy tells David that he gave him nightmares and an ulcer, and that he thinks about him all the time. David informs Carmy that he never thinks of him, and he should thank him because his strategy worked. When Carmy came to work for him, he was an okay chef, he says, but now he's a great chef. Carmy is stunned, and David walks away from him, leaving Carmy unable to speak. This is not the resolution Carmy was hoping for. When Chef Terry gives a speech at the funeral dinner, she says that nobody remembers the food. They remember the people. And after the dinner, we see her join Richie and other people at Sydney's apartment, like Luca and other staff from the Bear, while Carmy is left walking the streets alone. Sydney, however, has to leave the party in the middle because she has a panic attack over the decision she has to make regarding which restaurant she's going to work for, the Bear or Chef Adam's new venture. In the last scene of the season, Carmy gets an alert on his phone that the Tribune article just posted. The article looks like a muddled review with some good and some bad, but Carmy is extremely disappointed in it. Is this going to lead to the closing of the Bear in season 4, or are they going to turn it around? Is Sydney going to work for the Bear or off on her own? These are hopefully some of the questions that will be answered in the final season of the Bear. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.